Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now today I want to touch in on the thing that I talked about last week, which is the Tony Robbins hashtag #MeToo situation, mostly because it's continued to roll on, even though it was a nothingness to begin with. It should have, it was some ridiculous viral video that's gone and painted him in my opinion, a fairly straightforward light. He's doing what he always does, and then and he's very specific in the things that he says and does as well. And so then, though, seeing how people's narratives have changed, people have responded, people have removed context. Especially various news outlets have edited down the 11-12 minute clip into 10-second segments that show off exactly what they want to show, removing context again, the same way the context has then been this thing that's been easily disposed of in numerous news stories of late. But the thing that troubles me more, and more so than possibly anything else, is that I've seen other coaches, people in the same industry as myself and Mr. Tony Robbins, who are coming out and throwing him under the bus simply because either they've not bothered to take a look at the information themselves, or simply because they felt like it and because it seems to further their own agenda in some way. And how, I don't understand. You know, the most powerful and most influential coach on the planet, one of the best known names in coaching, both in the industry and outside of it. And he's saying things in a very specific, very straightforward manner, especially in the United States. He's following a kind of approach to coaching that is very energetic and direct and physical and all those kind of things. And yet the information that he's giving out is specific, it's nuanced, and he's accepting, and he makes his point, but he accepts the point otherwise. He gains, the thing that's important to me is he gains confirmation from the people around him in the audience, including the woman Nanine McCool, who raises the issue. She agrees, she raises her hand and agrees on every point, and then tries to backpedal, and then it becomes this case of, even when at the end she admits that she misunderstood what he was saying and where he was coming from, even though he was very specific throughout the whole thing, and most of the audience seemed to get it, considering the number of hands that were shown, including her own. She's then backpedaled, jumped off onto her own narrative, especially considering she's been getting support. And then at the very end of the point, this is the thing that I feel Tony Robbins should be told off for. And that is, at the very end of what he's saying at his event, someone calls out for him to apologize, and he says, no, I'm not going to apologize, because I've just been saying my thing, and it's been straightforward. There's been a little bit of grey area here with what Nanine McCool is bringing up, but at the same time, everything I'm said is accurate, and I'm not going to be a disingenuous human being apologizing over nothing. And then all it took was a few people making a lot of noise over this nothing for him to then apologize. That's what I feel he needs a swift kick up the rear for, because I feel, looking at the situation, he would gain an awful lot more respect if he had put out a statement, not necessarily doubling down, but asserting the fact that it was dealt with at the event, and the conversation was there, and it was there as a set of examples, and there's nothing else to really go with that. The one point that I've heard a few people raise is, oh well, he raised that example of saying that a businessman had one woman and two men, and she was better qualified and all the rest of it, but she was attractive, and he said, she's a risk, I can't have her around. And he's sexist and terrible for saying and doing that. And it's like, well, no, hold on. leanin.org, the stats that they put out a little while ago that we went through on this channel in a video, I think about a month and a half ago, were found that in a lot of corporate jobs, corporate positions, men are finding it harder now, especially after things like #MeToo. They are afraid of just pissing off the wrong person and being falsely accused when they're in mentorship positions, when they're in management positions, when they're on business trips. And so they actively go out of their way to go, no, I won't be mentoring these women, I won't be doing this, I won't be doing that, because it's too much of a risk to me as an individual, because I can't rely and count on these people not then just getting pissed off at the wrong thing and flying off to Twitter, never actually filing proper complaints or anything, but flying off to social media, gaining a mob, and then getting the mob to pressure me out of my job. Yeah, so I'm not surprised that the example that Tony Robbins has from a businessman who is seemingly on the higher end of things, considering the general kind of level of a lot of Tony Robbins's clients. I'm not surprised that individual has gone, well, we've got this and that and the other, and we've got this guy, and they're both kind of okay, and then we've got this girl, and she stands out and she's amazing, but at the same time, we don't really want to touch in on that. We don't really want to deal with that if it goes bad. You know, a guy kicking up a fuss over whatever isn't going to be as damaging or as major or gain as much attention as a woman who can get pissed off potentially over anything, something said in the wrong way, even take it even to social media, completely ignoring things like company policy and all the rest of it, and put whoever this individual was in hot water over potentially nothing. Yes, that's a genuine concern. It's a concern that even groups like leanin.org that are incredibly ideologically focused and usually completely lacking in perspective are still finding. And as much as they're going, oh no, you should still mentor people, you should still go and manage and work with these women and stuff like that, it's like, yes, I would agree with that. But at the same time, if it is found that by those individuals that they aren't comfortable doing it because it's too much of a risk, they are already in the position that they are in. They have done a good job, seemingly, to get there in the first place, in which case, them as being part of that company already is far more important to them and the people around them than hiring in someone new who is an unknown commodity. That should be simple logic and should make sense to everybody. In which case, some people have taken it as, oh, boo-hoo for rich guys who can't hire hot women. Other people have gone, oh, well, that means he's being sexist because she was obviously the best qualified, but just based on her gender, she's been and whatever else, she's the one that's been dropped and all that kind of thing. And the first thing I would say is, in regards to the first one, in regards to, oh, boo-hoo for men who can't hire hot women, that's not what was said. And in regards to the second point where it's like, oh, he was sexist because, well, no, because you have to weigh up the pros and cons of someone. And if there's an unknown commodity that could be hugely detrimental, then you're not going to hire that person. Simple. The number I've gone for jobs that I was by far better qualified for than everybody else that went for it. At one point there were 3 of us, and I sat outside and had a chat with those guys before we went in. I was the best qualified. They were both just a bit older than me, and because the rest of the team that they had there was considered to be older, I was turned away. Is that ageism? Kinda, yeah, pretty much. But also you have to look at how one of the biggest concerns, one of the things that I came across a lot when I first started doing interviewing in the various jobs that I had that as a responsibility, it became a point of going, one of the most important things isn't whether or not they'll manage to work a till. That's something they can learn. It's not whether or not they're going to be able to understand all of our policies. That's something we can coach them on. It's not going to be whether or not they are the most capable of solving every problem. That's why there are other managers, supervisors, and team members around them to cope with those situations. What's the most important thing? The most important thing is that they fit in with that team. They fit in with those other people so that they can learn, so that they can be coached, so that they will seek and can look to seek help from other people in a positive and constructive way, instead of being turned away over a query. And so, looking at it here, what this individual has been saying to Tony Robbins, seemingly, which again seems to be one of these lines that's been just ripped out of the thing, completely out of context and hurled around, is, yes, he's saying that she was better qualified. But that's something he couldn't go for. He couldn't employ her because, in terms of fitting in with the team, there was an unknown commodity there that could not be tracked properly in a way that would actually allow him to have certainty of a good thing in hiring her. Fair enough. And then Tony Robbins goes on to say that harms everybody, and no one seems to have grasped what he meant by that. Even though it's been said numerous times all over the place the last few years, and reiterated time and time again by movements and organisations that have led up to the #MeToo movement, which also have bad people in sometimes who misuse those things. So, but going back to the point, the issue that he's saying is, it harms everybody, because if it doesn't just harm the woman, it harms the businessman as well, because if he's got this person who's better qualified, well, if he can't hire her, then his life is going to be harder. When you hire someone new, you want the most qualified person, the most expert person, because they're going to make your life easier than someone who has less expertise. So if he's not able to hire her because of this unknown commodity that could cause damage to him and his organisation, then he's missing out on something that will make his life much, much easier, potentially drive his business in various ways onto bigger and better things. And the other way around, she loses out on a job and she loses money, and potentially it was the job that she wanted, who knows. But again, it comes down to, there's that everybody's suffering because of this. And when it comes to that as an area of upset, well, why is that such an issue? And it's simple. It's because #MeToo and movements like it have been misused. We've had numerous demonstrations of people throwing false reports out there in regards to things like rapes and assaults that have then been found to be incorrect. The most infamous, in fact, probably the one that was in Rolling Stone, where you had the girl who spoke to Rolling Stone, and Rolling Stone didn't do any proper investigative reporting and checking up on the claims, and her story turned out to be completely false, in spite of the fact that she had labelled a large number of individuals as complicit in this assault that supposedly took place. And then on top of that, she had labelled a set of specific individuals who were apparently the assaulters, the individuals that turned her into a victim, and it turned out to be completely false. And yet people are willing to forget about that and about other things like it. So when Tony Robbins then turns around and says, the movement is good, the movement is great, the movement is empowering and it gets resources to the people that needs it, great, don't have a problem with that. What I have is a problem who misuse that. Any tool is a tool. Any organisation is also a tool. Any tool, no matter what it is, can be misused. A spade is for digging holes. You can still beat someone over the head with it. A gun is, as is continually reported in the States, therefore personal defence. And yet there's still a reason why you've got huge amounts of gun crime and the highest gun mortality rate in the Western, the kind of Western advanced kind of world. And so it's like, yeah, guess what? There are things that can be used for good, and yet all it takes is one person to be a dick, and it turns around and it gets used for bad. So when I see other coaches, especially there are a couple of coaches in particular who I won't name, but who I've met, I've interacted with. Some of them are very, very high profile within their spheres. Some of them do an awful lot of good work, and yet then when they use very, very slanted views, Good Morning America had a piece on this, had a segment on it that was very slanted, very heavily edited in terms of the initial clip. Where there was only, I think maybe a minute or 2 minutes worth of the entire 12-minute clip that was actually shown, and then the rest was just people talking over it, saying how bad it was, when there was no real evidence of what they were complaining about. And then you've got others like the Young Turks, who are incredibly ideologically driven, and who are very, very slanted, who were just, again, also had cut down all of this footage and even their complaints into like a 3.5 minute video, I think. And it's these coaches who are supposed to be talking about reason, they're supposed to be talking about reality and the way that we manage ourselves in the moment to move forward, using reality and realism and logic and all of those things, good planning, solid things that you can hold on to. They're literally blowing fairy dust into the air by taking these heavily edited videos instead of doing taking the time to just watch the clip and see what's being said. And it disturbs me and it worries me, and it's those coaches, when they do things like that damage all of us. Tony Robbins has done a huge amount of good over his career for both, obviously, himself, but for coaching in general and the people that he has helped. In terms of coaches like me, who are far, far smaller, by hundreds and hundreds of times smaller, we're still trying to help people, and we're following the similar methods of empowerment through logic, reason, planning, and overcoming yourself. And yet then when over something like this, other coaches seem to decide that they want to take advantage of this situation and lambast one of those people who has done so much good work over comments that are a non-issue. He hasn't said anything wrong. Those people are damaging the profession as a whole. There's already an awful lot of misinformation and misleading stuff around coaching and what a coach does, which is why I've put videos out on this channel, why I've done articles on my blog about what a coach does, what I do, and kind of how we're not just there to tell people how to live their lives. We're there to set out some things and work with people to develop their own path to what they want to be and where they want to be. And like, looking at it now, those coaches are doing not only Tony Robbins and coaching as a profession a disservice, they are also doing themselves a disservice, because if anything, they're only removing their own credibility in terms of, well, they've not seemingly watched the entire clip, they've not judged what is being said fairly and on the truth of what is said, and they have decided to either lash out or make statements that are incredibly uninformed, illogical, and make no sense. And that hurts all of us. And it's troubling and it's tiring, because I didn't want to talk about this again. I thought going over the initial comments and the responses would be enough, but after sitting down and watching the whole clip, which granted I hadn't done last time, I was reading off a transcript of the whole thing, but after sitting down and actually watching it, which granted in the transcript didn't involve the moment where he takes her hand and pushes against her, and it's like, well, yeah, but those kind of activities are activities that all kinds of coaches do. The one that always gets shown off is the trust exercise where you fall backwards into someone's arms, and it's like those kind of physical examples to allow people to understand and develop understanding around a specific set of feelings and things. They're stuff that all kinds of people do. Tony Robbins is fairly well known for getting his audience to do things, to learn through doing, to get up and to shout at each other and to move around a bit. And he himself is a very active and physical individual. Yes, he's a large man compared to the woman that stood up to argue the point. But again, he wasn't harming her or anything like that. He gently took her hand and pushed her, not over, but just away from him. Something that was not a particularly aggressive or assertive move. It was simply an exemplary move in terms of what they were discussing. And yet that's another thing that's been picked up and complained about and all the rest of it. But now after actually watching it, granted, wasn't in the transcript I used before. After watching the actual video though, again, she was fine with it. If she had said, no, get off me, he probably would have done. Again, she was agreeing with everything he said at the time, and it's only after she gained further support outside of that her tune has changed again. She has been demonstrated to be disingenuous. Tony Robbins, unfortunately, is also being demonstrated to be disingenuous, at least in terms of public statements from his Facebook apology compared to his initial statements right then and there, when he was in the right as well. So it's a big mess, and unfortunately the response from the coaching community and other coaches who are quite high profile, it's running it into the ground in a way. It's damaging and it's upsetting, especially as someone who is progressing and growing within this industry, to see the weakness and the way that we as an industry focus on very specific things, most prominently again reason, logic, what can you do right now, what is happening right now, how can you handle it right now, all of those things being ignored in favor of knee-jerk responses and trying to save face in the face of people that really and truly were never going to use your services anyway. Or if they were, then they were going to do so in a very slanted way that was very selective, and they wouldn't buy into the whole thing entirely, as has been evidenced by the response from the woman who was there at the event. It's troubling and it's exhausting to see. But anyway, guys, if you're at all interested in this, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're a coach like me, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But just, it makes no sense to me that information that is being put out there that is completely accurate, highlighted using an example that's in the limelight, sure, but otherwise it's just a very straightforward example, has allowed for a person to be pushed backwards on their own principles, especially someone with as much influence as Tony Robbins, and then seeing the response around it from other coaches who should be better than they are, and yet they're not, seemingly. I'm not looking for perfection, but what I am looking for is to practice what you preach and follow your own ethics and methods. There are people who, after looking at this and demonstrating that they can't be trusted in terms of adhering to reality and the realism of the situation that they're discussing, if they were still in positions they were when I first met them, I would already be pitching complaints in to have them removed from those positions, because it's against the code of conduct that myself and they would have had to follow. So it's troubling to see this so much, and especially when we're already an industry that's filled with people who are either unqualified, don't know what they're doing, lack experience in various ways, mix together mysticism and things that don't make sense at all, have no grounding in reality, with coaching to try and push that on other people, and all of those sorts of things, when we're already an industry that has that as a challenge for us to overcome. Doing this and seeing those coaches who otherwise would be among the reasonable and the logical lash out at someone who has done so much for that side of this particular industry, over comments that are accurate and nuanced and cannot be challenged on reasonable grounds. I don't know, it leaves me kind of feeling a little, it just leaves me with a bad taste in my mouth, you know? But then again, I'm no stranger to having to deal with daft coaches and people in my industry who are not on the level, should we say. So as a result, I'd love to hear your thoughts, guys, and I'm going to stop rambling and stuff now. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video later. Take care.